I'm Michelle from the Starling Tribune, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, the opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 90 of Better Podcasting. On today's show, we ask the question, why did you or why do you want to start podcasting?
In this week's Better Podcasting download, you better close your ears, Libsyn users. We're talking about a new feature with Podbean.
And finally, in this week's Better Podback, we ask the question, how do you like your Steven?
I like mine in the mirror. Lauren, start the episode now.
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Hello and welcome to episode number 90 of Better Podcasting. I am the sixth Stephen John Drew, and with me, of course, is Stargate Pioneer.
I am the one, the only, the SP, and I am excited and fired up to be back in the studio, in the house. It's good to be back home.
Yeah, you were away for a little bit there, and we didn't know whether or not we were going to get a chance to get this episode out. But hey, guess what? If one of us is sick, the other is away, or we're both at the same time, and we still make this show happen because we love podcasting about podcasting, even though we're just hobby podcasters. We're committed. Well, they're committing me tomorrow is actually the
later tonight. Yeah. Actually, yes. If we did this podcast where I was a couple of days ago, we would be doing it by Telegram because that's how slow my internet was. Did you see the internet speed of where I was staying, Stephen?
I did. It was like not even registering an upload. It was amazing.
0.00 on the upload. That was tough. It was a tough week. It was, for a lot of reasons, it was a tough week. But I just want to take this opportunity right here on Better Podcasting to say thank you, Mr. Stephen John Drew, for pulling your weight in my shows that I produce. So thank you very much in providing me some edit. We'll actually have to talk about that sometime in the future.
Yeah, it was fun. I had the opportunity to help out a pal this past week, and Chris, I hope that you enjoyed everything I did for you. No, it was SP. I helped out, and it was fun. It was nice to change things up. And yeah, we'll talk about that in the future. If you want to write us in the meantime, go ahead. You can reach us through a variety of different ways. You can reach us at BetterPod on Twitter. You can find us at betterpodcasting.com or facebook.com/betterpodcasting. Why not send an email and video clip to podcast@betterpodcasting.com too? You can go ahead and do that. Just reach us, and we want to hear from you. So let us know all sorts of questions that you have for us, or answer these selected questions that we have chosen for you, which is, what is a hobby podcast? Or maybe, why did you start podcasting? We're going to talk about that later today. Or also tell us, what exactly microphone do you like the best? We want to know, which microphone do you like the best? And just tell us any of these answers. We want to know.
Stephen wants to know. Stephen specifically wants to know about what microphone. We'll talk about that later, but we have a little thing with Stephen and his microphone. So yes, you can get all of that into us, and we will use your input on a future show. In the meantime, we have an exciting main topic to get to, Stephen. Let's get to it.
Oh, I so spoiled it. We talked about it previously on past episodes. We solicited your feedback by enticing you to enter our contest. That's right. We are giving away a brand new Audio-Technica ATR 2100 microphone Not giving it away this episode. Next episode, we will have the lucky winner because we like to stretch things out, right? So we asked you the question, why do you want to start podcasting? So we asked you that question, and guess what we're going to do today? We're going to run down some of the answers that we got.
Yeah, we selected a few that we would be joyous to talk about, and we thought our listener would like to hear as well. So we're going to be talking about them, and those that had sent in video or audio feedback, we will play those as well. We've got a lot to talk about. So without any further ado, I'm going to start off with the first selected entry. And this was from Chris Long. He says, "Hi guys, long-time listener, first-time caller. Now that the generic joke is out of the way, here we go. I've been looking into doing a podcast for a while, thinking about 3 years, but I never really got into the planning side of things because I didn't have a great setup or any topic I wanted to get into. On top of that, I didn't have a co-host who would be able to do this alongside me, and I have no illusion of legendary podcasting skill, so I didn't want to go into it alone. Up until a few months ago, I never really got a solid footing because I didn't know where to start. It was then that another Gonna Geek podcast, which coincidentally is the Cody Golf run Game Life Balance US, gave your show a shout out. I decided to give it a listen, and I was hooked. From the dynamic between the glorious Steven and just the kind of their SP, I might have those mixed up a little bit, to the topics covered, into the interaction in the better pod back, it almost felt like it was designed for me. Now that I've listened to the current shows and the backlog with a pad of paper, my friend and I are going to start a test run to see how much we both like it. Since we're both poor college students, we're going to test with no gear and minimal software to make sure we like it before we put any money into it. Our connection right now is mostly focused on video games, so that's where we are going to start, but we'll see where it goes. We'll be going for 3 weeks with an episode each week. I drop a link, but to go from the high quality of better podcasting to the laptop mics on our end would just be cruel. Thanks for reading. Love the show and can't wait for the next episode. Christopher Long." There's a lot of great stuff in there, Steven.
Yeah, first off, I noticed that he talked about the dynamic microphones between Stargate Pioneer and Steven. That's what he meant by dynamic, right? He was talking about dynamic microphones, right?
Wasn't our personality at all, but
no.
There you go. There was a double entendre there. Glorious Steven and just kind of their SP. Yeah, swap around Glorious SP and the just kind of their Steven. There you go.
No, seriously, this is fantastic. And we talk about audio quality and we think audio quality is super important, but as a hobby podcaster who is on a college budget, I think it's very important to make sure this is the hobby that you like. I love what you're doing and you're just starting off with what you've got to see if you like it. Why go and invest in a bunch of gear if you're going to be like, I hate it? It's a hobby. You might just go and try to play hockey and realize I hate it. Or you might go and you try to knit, and next thing you know, your shirt turns into a little, your little sweater turns into just like a scarf because you can't knit properly. So why invest in all of the knitting needles?
Steven, that's because you were crocheting. You weren't knitting. There's a difference between the two.
Sure. But seriously, love this entry. Thanks so much, Christopher Long, and we want you to drop us a link. We want to know a little bit about it. We want to hear, even though it is, quote, the whatever you said, the laptop mics. We want to hear. So drop us that link when you got it out there. We do want to hear.
Definitely, and I'll just reiterate really quickly what Steven said. I do like the approach of ramping up, especially if you've never podcasted before. You can take it into consideration, like these are throwaway episodes or a throwaway podcast before you start what you're really doing. And also, 3 years might be a little bit long, but you got to look into what topic excites you, what's going to be passionate, because the passion that you feel at the beginning is going to be the most passion that's going to get you through the hard times. So really, you need to pick a really good topic and then plan your show out. And so I really do think you're doing the right thing, Christopher, and your co-host, who you didn't name, by the way. Steven, are you his co-host?
We'll just wait to find out when he drops that link. Before we move on to Zachary Webbs, I will just say that SP talked about the passion, and we know he does several episodes or several shows a week. So I'm going to dub that the pioneer passion. That's what it is. It's the pioneer passion.
That's why I like the pioneer name. That's so cool. Steve. For once we agree on a nickname for me, the pioneer passion. All right, let's move on to the next entry.
Hello, Steven and SP. This is my entry for your contest. The question was, why did you start your podcast? I started my podcast because I love my topic, technology. I've loved tech since I was a little boy. I would play on the computer or just sit and watch my dad being on it. I also started coding and making at age 12. The second reason for starting my podcast was that I love the medium of podcasting. I love microphones, recording, and even Audacity. Thanks for the great show, and I hope for many episodes of podcasting advice to come from Better Podcasting.
What microphone is he using? Do you know?
It looks like an Audio-Technica AT2005, but it could be the Knox podcasting microphone. Hard to tell between the two.
It is, because he has a wonderful mic foam on, which, when we do give away the Audio-Technica ATR 2100, we're giving away a foam windscreen because that microphone does like to pop the peas.
Poppy, popcorn, pioneer. Yeah, it does. Likes to pop the peas, and it would be so much worse what I just did if I had a bare ATR 2100 in front of me instead of the proximity effect controlled RE320 with the pop filter on it as well. Zachary, thank you very much for the entry. You're serious about tech. You're young. You're really excited about your podcast. I really enjoy it. And then you send in us this wonderful audio and video feedback and into the contest entry. That's great. I remember when I was a kid, I just loved to get into the tech side of things. Stephen, I think you and your brother did as well, where anything in the house, whether it's a video game machine or a computer or anything, that was just phenomenal. I remember thinking back then, seeing like the back end control rooms for news programs that were actually like sitcoms or whatever. WKRP in Cincinnati, where you saw a radio set. I was like, oh man, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Well, don't want to necessarily work at WKRP in Cincinnati anymore, but this is just plain fun hobby podcasting. We get your passion, Zachary. Thank you very much for your entry.
Yes, thank you for that. And tech does rule. Next one that we've got comes from Lee Searcy, and he says, I am working on starting a podcast because the medium is very interesting and a chance to talk about topics that people my age would be interested is exciting to me. Oh, that's why we do this. We love the shared passion of not only people our age, but others. We have listeners that are younger. We have listeners that are older. We have people who have previously, in a previous life, whipped SP and I because we were naughty school children. We got all sorts of people who listen to the show.
A long time ago. I believe that the phrase that you're looking for is like-minded people. That's really what you're thinking about. And yes, that's the exciting thing about podcasting is you can find like-minded people. If you don't find that person that's excited about your passion, your hobby at work, in your community, in your church, anywhere in your state or country as it may be, yes, you can find somebody that's interested in the same stuff by podcasting about it, and they will search for the key terms and they will start listening to you, and you will create your own community around what you're talking about. I mean, in the geek realm, we have a lot of opportunity for that. You got the Transformer group over there with Jeremy, and you've got Gonna Geek for some TV shows. You've got Better Podcasting for people that are just geeking out about podcasting. You name it, it is available for you. And that is why I like this entry. Thank you very much for applying to be a winner for the ATR 2100 giveaway, Mr. Lee.
By the way, I personally don't care about anybody else who has the shared interest because my opinion is the most important, right?
No, it's mine, as we discovered a couple of weeks ago when I fired you.
That's true. All right, what do we got next there, Stargate Pioneer?
We have an entry from the Take hosts. Actually, I think it's just Allison from Myth Take, and she has a audio entry. You ready to hear it, Stephen?
Always.
All right, here we go.
Hello, it's Allison from Myth Take here. I got into podcasting accidentally. My co-host Darren Sundstrom asked me one day if I thought we could do a podcast about heroes and mythology, and I naively said, sure, why not? Our reasons for podcasting really fall into two categories. First, we want to explore and develop our own ideas about mythology and the heroic narrative. Between us, we have many years' experience teaching mythology at university, but we both wanted a space where we could explore ideas we don't get to in the classroom. And the podcast allows us to do that and to develop our own ideas, as well as to connect with people with other perspectives or from other areas of interest. And secondly, not a lot of people are familiar with our academic field of classics and what we do as academics. The podcast is a way to kind of pull back the curtain and show people what we think about and the topics that we deal with and how relevant they can be. Myths and hero stories capture people's imaginations, but not many people realize where those stories come from. And we want to share our knowledge and passion for Greek mythology and the ways it continues to be reinterpreted in modern stories, like Wonder Woman or other superheroes, with anyone who is interested. The ancient world is a lot more relevant than people might expect. And we hope that people who listen to our podcast are surprised with their ability to connect what we talk about with modern stories and movies. Podcasting has been a great experience for us, and we have made some great connections with other podcasters who have overlapping or similar areas of interest. And I would certainly do it all over again.
Thank you very much, Allison. That is an awesome entry. And I love the show. I love the ability to bring out mythology into modern. Matter of fact, she was talking about the comics and like Wonder Woman. There was just recently a backstory in the DC Rebirth comics called the Odyssey of the Amazons, which got into a lot of several intertwined mythologies. And I would love to hear their take on that. So, Allison, if you're interested, pick up the Odyssey of the Amazons and make some connections there for me. That would be a great series to have on Myth Take.
And thanks so much for sending that in by audio clip. That was fantastic. Next one that we got comes from Mark Farquhar. I think I said that totally wrong, but my apologies. Mark is actually a longtime listener. I've exchanged a fair amount of emails with Mark over the years, and I'll just let SP read. It has nothing to do with the fact that if I try to read something right now, I'm going to start coughing. It has nothing to do with that.
A little bit of the cold voice going on for Stephen. So Mark writes, hey, Stephen and SP, I started my podcast because after working in the music industry for many years and building up quite a list of hardworking and talented people, I realized I never really got to interact and talk with these people other than the brief periods when we were working together in some way, shape, or form, because we are always so busy. So now that I'm taking a break, I thought it would be the perfect time to reach out to these people and have them sit down with me and just talk. Something we never previously got to do due to the nature of our business. I started listening to podcasts back in 2009, and about 18 months ago had the realization that I could do my own podcast. So after a year of research and trial and error, I finally started my own podcast back in February called Behind the Noise, which can be found at behindthenoise.net, in which I talk to various people involved in the music industry from various levels and occupations. I've since had lots of positive feedback saying how much they enjoy the shows and that they like it because not only are they getting to hear conversations that they don't normally get to hear, but also because we go after the people that don't do much public speaking or talking in the media. So we get a more varied guest list and it makes for some great content. We now have regular listeners in 15 countries, and we are very happy with how it's going. Hope you are both well, Mark.
Thanks so much for that. I really appreciate the detail on that. And the thing that I really appreciate with your history is that you reached out to us a few times, and I like that you've taken some of the things that we've said and you've tried other methods and whatnot as well. And that's one of the biggest things. And I know you don't say that in there, but it's one of the biggest things that I really liked about what you've reached out to us about is that you listen to all sorts of different opinions and you're kind of trying to find your own way. And I do think that that's such an important thing for a podcaster is you got to find what works best for you. And a lot of times people think, oh, I should pay for a X service that will tell me all about how to podcast and I should follow A, B, C, and D. Well, that doesn't always work for you. So Mark, thanks so much for your entry. That was fantastic. Next one that we got is a audio clip from a Christopher Lewis. Isn't that right, SP?
Yeah, Christopher Lewis has a website, The Dad of Divas, one dad's quest to regain control of his kingdom.
Hey, this is Chris Lewis from the Dad Spotlight podcast, as well as the Law School Insider podcast. And I started my podcast for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, the Dad Spotlight podcast was a partnership between myself and Don Jackson, and we came together to talk about fatherhood. We wanted to help dads be better dads, and we had been talking about parenting for quite a few years on our own blogs, and we knew that we had a message to share, and we wanted to have that message out there. So it was a great opportunity to be able to come together and be able to share some other great dads with other people to help, again, dads be better dads. Now, the Law School Insider podcast is a podcast that I started for my employer, and I work for a law school. And in this law school, we had found that there were very few law schools that were doing a podcast to help prospective students as well as current students to be able to understand what they need to do to be able to be successful in their law school journey. And the Law School Insider filled that void. So both of these shows have immensely allowed me to be able to grow not only as a communicator, but also grow as an individual. And it's been an amazing opportunity to be able to be the host or co-host of both of these shows. And it's definitely sparked my interest for future shows in the future.
Chris, that was amazing. For an attorney, an aspiring attorney going through law school, to be able to go through a legal podcast and learn how to do communication, that's important for litigation. It's important in the written form and it's important in the verbal form. And I know they do a lot of that in school with presentations, with mock trials and debates, but you can hone those skills on the podcast as well. What a great thing. And also, as a father of several kids in college, I do really enjoy the concept of a podcast for a student going through the different phases in college, whether that's going through the financial aid side of things, how to study, how to get through your first year, how to get through that undergrad, how to get through that postgraduate degree, whatever it is. Those are very important times in people's lives. And if you can do a podcast to help somebody, you are doing amazing stuff.
I got a few years till my kids go through college, but by then I'm sure that the world will just be over because no more podcasting will happen. That's the end of the world.
Maybe. You don't know. If you go look at BSG, man, they civilization had just completely gone away. All they had was a ragtag fugitive group of ships. There was still podcasting.
It's like the new version of Planet of the Apes. It's just the world has been taken over by podcasters. Next one that we have comes from Brooke Mead. Isn't that right, SP?
Yeah, Brooke writes, "Hey guys, I don't run a podcast yet, but I'm working on getting one started with a good friend of mine. The reason I want to start one is because it just seems like so much fun. I just graduated from film school and I really love creating media, and I think that this will be a really fun change of pace from filmmaking. I'll send you guys a link to the podcast when we get it up and running, especially if I win this microphone and can use it on the show. Anyways, thanks so much for all the help and advice you give on the show. It's really helped me out a lot so far, and I'm sure it'll help me even more once we get the show running."
I gotta say, I'm loving this idea. Because that's basically my path to podcasting. I loved video stuff as a kid. I went to film school, and then it was like, you know what? I'm not really doing much video stuff, but I love media creation. So what am I going to do? I made myself a podcast. So I love this. This is great. I encourage you to do it. As somebody who has transitioned from video to audio, back to video and audio, do it. Just do it.
Indeed, Brooke. Send us the link. Send us the link now. Do it now. We need the link. We need your link now.
All right. So for the next one here, you're going to have to turn up your volume slightly as SP reads this.
This is from the Sleep Whisperers podcast. Stephen and SP, here is my reason for starting my podcast, Sleep Whisperers. I had listened to other podcasts which help people to fall asleep, but for some, I did not like their content, and for others, I did not like their voices or speaking styles. So I decided to take the best of all the sleep-related podcasts I heard, a whispering voice, a slow and relaxed speech pattern, sharing ways I am trying to be a better person, sharing feedback from listeners, and to read interesting as well as dull things to help listeners fall asleep. And so far, the feedback from my listeners and my iTunes reviews have supported that I did create something helpful to others, and that feels good. Hoping you are free of sleep woes, Harris, the host of the Sleep Whisperers podcast.
SP, why is it that you're still yelling at us when you're trying to whisper? You sounded like you were yelling at us through just a quiet voice.
I wanted to make sure the noise gate didn't cut me out there.
Oh, you got to check these sleep podcasts out, Sleep Whisperers especially. I had not heard about them till Sleep Whisperers reached out, and I love Sleep Whispers. So check it out. Thank you for the entry. Fantastic. And finally, we got one last one here that we're going to read before we get to our download, and that comes from
Kissy Hankins. Thanks for the opportunity to enter the contest. I started my podcast as I was tired of the scrolling sea on social media. I might have something informative to say or share, and unless it was a cat or wedding photo, it would get lost in the scrolling sea. I also wanted to have a better way to archive my thoughts and topics and make them easy to find by having a website to complement. Thanks.
I gotta say, that social media problem, it's easily solved. Just turn your Twitter and your Facebook feed into entirely cat photos.
Or enter into Facebook with your not real name. That'll take care of the problem on Facebook right there.
Yeah. The thing with podcasting that I find that is different from social media is the discoverability, right? Like I find if you go and you post on Facebook, there's a chance that somebody who maybe doesn't actively watch your Facebook feed will see it or reshare it or whatever. With podcasting, I don't know that it's as easy to be discovered in that same manner. I find a lot of people use social media to aid the discoverability of their podcasting.
I have entered into a conundrum lately with Twitter because there's a lot of people that I wanted to follow to begin with, but they've turned their feeds into just this automatic tweets. They just rehashing old content that they're promoting. So I feel like I can't use Twitter anymore like I originally was, which was to hear their thoughts occasionally and to interact with them. And there are some people that do that automated tweeting that never get on Twitter. So you might send them a tweet and you will never hear back from them. So it's that sort of interaction that I don't care for very much on Twitter. Over on Facebook, as we know, I've been kicked off of Facebook. But from everything that I've heard lately, it has become more and more corporatized, monetized, and your content, your scrolling sea has been crafted for you in just different ways. So you might not even see the most important things that you're looking for. So yeah, social media has a little bit of issues. Now, I've heard that there are like 10,000 bloggers per one podcast. So if you're talking about differences in being able to be discovered, podcasting is phenomenal above blogging or social media. I mean, everybody's got a social media account. So this is a great idea to start a podcast, but you have to have something to say. You have to have a plan. You can't just be all over the place. unless you're a known commodity, unless you're the president of the United States, Mark Maron, whatever, you have to be able to stick on a specific topic long enough to capture an audience, become a personality, and then you can start talking about other things. But it's still a great idea to start a podcast. As long as you have something to talk about, podcasting is awesome.
Awesome. See what I did there? That goes ahead and wraps up the entries we're going to talk about today. Now, again, Libsyn users, close your ears. We're about to talk about Podbean.
Welcome to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
To be honest, Podbean doesn't get a lot of check by different people because the reality is that, as far as I'm aware, they're not an American company. And so there are a few different podcast media hosts that kind of encourage keeping the dollar within the US, and good to you if that's what you want to do. So a lot of times Podbean isn't really looked on because of that, and also some past experiences that people have had. Podbean used to have issues with stability. There also has occasionally been times where people have had troubles downloading as well, like as far as speed goes. As well, it used to be really hard to retain that feed and redirect it. Now, many of these issues have been solved by Podbean, but the thing is, you can only make a first impression once. And that's the bottom line here, is that because of that, there's a lot of eyes that are on other services like Libsyn and whatnot. And so Podbean doesn't really, I don't think they're talked about as much as they should be, in my opinion. Now, here's the thing. Lucky for us on the Gonna Geek Network, we have a couple of people, including our friend of the show, past guest, Chris Farrell, who uses them regularly. And so, admittedly, he passed us this link this week, and we thought it was worth sharing. On July 26, 2017, Podbean announced that you are now going to be able to easily upload your podcast to Facebook as a embedded video. That's right. If you go into your Podbean panel and you connect your account to Facebook, you are now going to be presented with two options. Either when it does the auto posting, like a lot of services do, it's either going to post it as a link. So on your page, it's going to post it as a link, or it's going to go and generate a video that gets uploaded. This is very similar to a few months back when Libsyn announced that you're going to be able to, that you can do that with YouTube. Podbean has decided to do this to Facebook, and I think that this is actually a really interesting idea. Now, the thing that has me with a bit of a question mark is the same question mark that I had with YouTube. Well, there's actually two of them. Number one, the people who are looking to play a Facebook video, are they looking for video or are they looking for audio? I've always been of the opinion, because of past experiences that I've had, where just a straight audio file with like a snapshot of your album art on YouTube doesn't get a lot of traction, because people who are going to YouTube are generally wanting to see some video content. Is that going to be the case with Facebook? Now, the thing with that I find really possibly different from YouTube is that Facebook video has recently made it so that as you press play on something and you scroll down in your timeline, it's now playing on the side. So that's a really easy way for people who just want to hear your podcast as they're browsing Facebook, and all those cat pictures can play your podcast and just have it going in the background. So maybe that's, a different use case than just watching video. The second question mark that I have here is, do you really want to do that? Because that's going to separate your statistics. If you go and you upload your podcast to YouTube or to Facebook, those stats aren't being translated over to your Podbean or your Libsyn account. So now when you're looking at your total reach, you got to kind of consider them separately. So those are a couple of question marks I still have. For me personally, I actually am much more interested in this feature than the YouTube feature, because I really think that for me, if I was viewing a timeline and I saw somebody's video in there and it was just an audio, I could probably see myself hitting play and continuing to scroll through my timeline as it's playing audio in the background. Yeah, I think it would be really, really easy for me to do that and check that out. And I absolutely can see myself doing that. With YouTube, not so much. If I'm on YouTube, I'm looking for video.
I am interested in how this is going to pan out as well, just for all the same reasons. Stephen and I are, in lockstep on this, and really don't have too much else to say other than it is a feature of Podbean. If you are using Podbean and you have a Facebook account, I would take advantage of this and post your episodes there. And Libsyn, you can post links back and announcements that your podcast has been published, but they can't publish the actual episode there because they want to put their player on there to send stats back. And that's something Facebook is not doing anymore. Rightly so, probably trying to contain the almighty dollar. They want the links going through them. They want the plays going through them. I get that from the Facebook standpoint, especially since they want real names to kick people without real names off in order to monetize. But we'll see how this goes. I have heard mixed results over on the YouTube side. I've heard people that just love it. I've heard people that like the closed captioning capability over on YouTube and ultimately getting the transcript. So it's beneficial for a lot of other reasons other than to playing the video to post your podcast over on YouTube. Over on Facebook, I'm not sure that those options really exist right now.
Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to point out here that is related to this is I actually noticed in this article, which you can find at geeks.link/Podbean Facebook. That's geeks.link/Podbean Facebook. There's actually an option to connect it to YouTube. So I actually looked into this and it looked like they launched the same sort of idea of embedding to YouTube back in April. So that was something they added back in April and I didn't realize that. So it looks like if you're on Podbean, you can do the YouTube and the Facebook. Again, for me personally, I am much more intrigued in the Facebook type of thing. So I'm wondering how long until some of the other folks make this happen.
Mostly, I'm wondering, for those people that are using Podbean right now, are you actually uploading to YouTube? Have you tried this Facebook feature out? And we'll talk to Chris and we'll get back to the Better Podcasting listener audience in the next couple of weeks on his trials with this. But I'm curious as to how you have explored the usage of this and has it been successful for you or not? So please feel free to get in touch with us at all the great ways, podcasts at betterpodcasting.com, on Twitter at betterpod. And we want to hear from you on your experiences with Podbean and auto publishing.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and find out what you had to say about me.
Conveniently, about a day ago, Stephen posted on the Better Pod Twitter a Twitter poll, and he said, my favorite large diameter dynamic cardioid broadcast microphone that Stephen Chandra has tried is A, the Audio-Technica BP40, B, the Rode Procaster, C, Electro Voice RE320, and D, Heil PR40. Thank you very much, Emily, for providing that little sound bump. Now, this poll conveniently left out two of the options that you have tried in the past year, the Shure SM7B and the Advanced Audio DM20. But I think you were going for the foremost like a broadcast microphone there, right?
Yeah, the intention was that I was selecting them because the 7B has sort of, it's known to have its own sort of unique sound. Like it's kind of like this more flat sound, and it's meant more also for singing as well. So I think it's in a little bit of a different class as well. The Advanced Audio DM20, I think that it's a bit of a cheaper product as well, as it's just and not necessarily built, but I think that it's also just sort of its own thing. It's not that well known yet. So I took the main four, which was, like SP said, the Audio-Technica BP40, the Rode Procaster, the EV RE320, as well as the I can never use that bump enough, but yeah, and it was interesting results that we got. I think we're gonna have to run this again for longer because I'm not happy about the sample size we got, but to be perfectly honest, but the results are interesting. We got 17% said the BP40, 17% said the Rode Procaster, 33% said the RE320, and 33% said the So I do want to run this longer. We'll wait a little bit. I want to run it a bit longer. I think that maybe we should compile a bit of video and, some back-to-back samples and encourage people to check it out, because I think it's an interesting question. For me personally, I got to say that the PR40 is not in the list, in the location in the list that I thought it would be, and I'll leave it at that. So there you go.
Yeah, fodder for future review by Stephen Jondrew. Well, that was your feedback to us in polls, but we also received feedback in tweets, and at the story, actually at Story Behind Pod, that's what it is, but it's the Story Behind Podcast said, yay for hearing at techno_bully on at Better Pod this morning. Loving the podcast editing talk. Yeah, and that was last week when we had John Buchanan's segment, a little voicemail that he put into the She Podcast group on, and Techno Bully just loved it. He said, if you are a new podcaster and others tell you editing is not needed on at Better Pod, and you hear my thoughts too. So he's also excited. He's like, yeah, other people that like editing too. Yes, editing is good.
It is. I actually analyze a lot of podcasts now, being like, where would I edit that? I would edit that here and here. I would mute the track here. I'm an over-analyzer. I actually think about that with my life too. I would edit you out of this part. No, I'm just kidding.
Make work very interesting. Actually, I've done that at work. I've listened to people talk going, oh my gosh, step away from the microphone. Those mouth sounds. Oh, no, dear God.
Never sit around a lunch table. We also had Kent J say, if you're still looking for advice, try a recent episode of at Better Pods. So this was a tweet that he was sending to somebody else. And thank you for the recommendation on that, Kent.
Yes. And also I sent a tweet in earlier this week, and really we'll talk about my week that I had in a future episode, but I was not in a place to have happiness that particular day, and I made happiness by saying, guys, I'm extra special excited for this week's at Better Pod to publish tomorrow. And the Story Behind replied, me too. I weirdly look forward to my Monday morning commutes because of the podcasts that have come out over the weekend. Yes, I think we all kind of do a little bit of that.
And finally, we got an email from loyal listener Johnny Pennington. Johnny, you sent us an email, and we're not going to read the whole thing because, well, let's be honest, we're just terrible individuals. But I have Stargate Pioneer, your favorite email reader, ready to tell, let's be honest, tell more about me.
Johnny writes, ole mi compadre, Steven. Oops, wrong language. I'll try again. Hey, mate, how about a shrimp on the barbie? I still don't think I'm getting this border country, different dialect Canadian thing right. Forgive me, as I still have trouble with good old American English. I've been corresponding with you for about a year now, although I have been listening and viewing your Better Podcasting show since almost the beginning in late 2015. That being said, I believe in my first email to you, I mentioned that you looked kind of like Dustin Diamond from Screech, Saved by the Bell, in the Saved by the Bell TV series. I don't believe that I was completely off base. However, I has revised and upgraded your likeness to a cross between Dustin Diamond, Screech, and Gerard Butler, the actor. Oh, no. Not the Gerard Butler from the movie 300, but the less, shall we say, built Gerard Butler in The Ugly Truth. Now, take these actors and mix up their DNA in some weird human alien mix, and you've got the podcast guru, Stephen Jondrew. Hey, just saying, who knows? A year from now, I might throw in some John Wayne, or maybe Pee Wee Herman. Now, I'm kind of wondering who SP looks like. Let me think. Anyhow, once again, I thank you guys for your information and your entertainment. Keep up the great work, and thanks again, Johnny Pennington.
Just going to say that in The Ugly Truth, his opposing actress was Katherine Heigl, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, I was going to say that is not a cut down. We actually own The Ugly Truth in DVD format in this house, and it has been watched in the car, in the house, in other vacation areas. So yeah, the ugly truth is well known in my house. That's actually not a cut down. I don't know if he was trying to cut you down or not, but that wasn't a cut. Although the built thing, I mean, you're definitely not built like a 300 guy.
No.
You're just not.
No, that's true. But anyways, so to my dad, Gerard Butler, I'll see you for dinner.
By the way, Tom Hanks or Bill Murray, that's who I've been compared to.
But that's going to take us to the end of the show. Thanks to everybody who came on by Geeks.live. We did record this week on a weird day, but don't worry, we're back to Wednesdays next week. That includes Emily, Scott, Seth, and everybody who checked us out streaming everywhere that we stream. You could check us out at www.geeks.live on Wednesday evenings. That's our usual recording time. So we want to know, what did you think of us switching over to the Sunday release time? Because that's when the show drops. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think? Please let us know to podcast@betterpodcasting.com or tweet us at betterpod, or just go over to Stargate Pioneer's house, knock on his door, and then he'll call the cops.
Yes, and the security system will record you and detain you.
Awesome. So for episode number 90 of Better Podcasting, I'm Stephen John Drew saying, how did I make it through this episode without choking?
And I'm SP saying it's good to be back in the studio. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you again next time. Take us out, Lauren.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Better Podcasting. We want to hear from you. You can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. If you like the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review in iTunes. We encourage you to check out all of the other geeky podcasts available at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. This has been a Gonna Geek production. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week.